Weakness never hides, it pretends. It dresses itself in confidence, in loud voices, in the armor of appearances. But patterns betray it. Always. You've seen it before. A man who speaks with certainty, yet cracks when silence enters the room. A man who insists he's in control, yet reveals his fragility in the way he explains, the way he reacts, the way he cannot stop himself from proving. Weakness isn't trembling hands or lowered eyes. It is repetition, predictable, mechanical, ritualistic. According to Machiavelli, no disguise lasts forever. He wrote that rulers betray themselves, not with words, but with actions repeated too many times to ignore. Weakness leaks through the smallest details. A rushed justification, a nervous glance, a tone that shifts too quickly. These are not random slips. They are confessions. You must learn to watch for them, to recognize that men don't expose themselves by accident. They expose themselves because they cannot help it. The untrained eye sees nothing, but once you sharpen your perception, weakness becomes deafening. This is the essence of Machiavelli's identification tactic. It is not about asking questions or demanding answers. It is about watching, waiting, observing how a man behaves when he thinks no one notices. Today, I will expose 3 behaviors that betray weak men instantly. They are not mistakes, they are signals. And if you can read them, you will never waste time wondering who is strong and who is already broken. First behavior is the need to justify. According to Machiavelli, the more you explain, the more you expose yourself to judgment. And judgment is weakness. You already know this. You've seen it in others. And maybe, if you're honest, you've caught it in yourself. The moment you feel accused, you rush to speak. You rush to defend, to clarify, to explain. But here's the truth you don't want to face. Every justification is an admission. Every extra word proves you care too much about how you're seen. The strong don't explain. The strong don't beg for understanding. The strong let silence do the work. Weak men can't. Confront them and watch how quickly their mouth betrays them. They drown the room with reasons. They flood every corner with excuses, as if piling words high enough will cover the hole that's already opened in their image. But you and I know better. Explanations don't erase doubt. They confirm it. Listen closely. The weak man cannot stop himself. He cannot sit in the discomfort of being misunderstood. He cannot allow someone to think less of him without attempting repair. And in that attempt, he gives himself away. He shows you the core of his fear, that his value depends entirely on your perception. Think of the courtroom. The guilty man always talks too much. He tries to persuade, to convince, to justify. But the judge, the jury, they don't hear strength in his words. They hear desperation, and desperation is the scent of weakness. The same rule applies in life, in the office, when a man scrambles to explain why he failed, in relationships, when he overcompensates with endless apologies, in public, when he cannot endure criticism without immediately correcting the record. Each moment exposes him. Each word drags him further into the pit. Machiavelli warned rulers against this. He wrote that authority collapses when you lower yourself to explanation, because the moment you justify, you position yourself beneath the other. You submit to their judgment. You hand them control. And this is why silence is heavier than defense. The strong don't explain because they don't need to. They know the mind of others will fill the silence with fear, respect, or doubt, and that projection is always more powerful than anything spoken. But the weak cannot endure that silence. They cannot endure being questioned without fighting back with words, and those words betray them. Think about it. A man accused of arrogance. The strong one says nothing. He lets the accusation hang, forcing the accuser to wonder, to question, to fill in the blanks. But the weak one rushes to clarify. That's not what I meant. You misunderstood. Let me explain. And in that moment, his strength dies, because power is not in proving. Power is in withholding. You can identify the weak simply by watching their compulsion. Notice how quickly they rush to defend themselves. Notice the excuses, the clarifications, the endless "what I meant was." They can't help it. They think they are repairing their image, but in reality, they are destroying it. And this is where you gain control. You don't argue with them. You don't reassure them. You don't even need to expose their contradiction. You simply watch. Stay silent. Their own words will bury them deeper. The weak always confess, not because you demand it, but because they can't resist the urge to explain. This is their flaw and your weapon. The cost of vulnerability is revealed here, because every justification is vulnerability laid bare. Every explanation proves the fear of rejection, and once you see it, you can exploit it. Deny them reassurance, and they collapse. Give them silence, and they squirm. Push them slightly, and they drown themselves in words. People only want what they can't control. This is why silence is dominance. When you do not justify, you deny control. You let others sit in uncertainty, and that uncertainty grows into power. But the weak surrender power the moment they open their mouth. That's why Machiavelli's tactic was never to confront, but to observe, to let weakness reveal itself through behavior, to let men talk, defend, explain, until they've already confessed more than you could have forced out of them. So, the first behavior is this: the need to justify. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And once you hear it, you no longer need proof of weakness. Because the weak man cannot keep his silence. He cannot endure misunderstanding. He cannot resist the urge to explain. And by explaining, he has already surrendered. Second behavior is the public display of emotion. According to Machiavelli, conceal your nature or you arm your enemies. You don't notice it at first. You only feel the room tilt. A word lands wrong. A glance lingers. A boundary is brushed. And something inside you surges for air. You want to correct it. You want to show them what it did to you. That impulse feels honest. It feels righteous. It isn't. It's a leash. I learned this the hard way. A quiet insult, and I answered with heat. The temperature rose, and so did their control. They didn't need proof. They had my reaction. That was enough. That's how weak men give themselves away. Not in what they do, but in what they cannot stop doing. Watch a man when he's challenged. His jaw stiffens. His voice climbs. His timing speeds up. He tries to win the room with force. He calls it passion. It's exposure. He has given you the switch that turns him on and off. Anger looks like strength. It isn't. It's a roadmap. If I can make you flare, I can move you. If I can move you, I can predict you. And if I can predict you, I can control you. That's not dominance. That's invisibility lost. Sadness exposes something different. The weak man displays it publicly, inviting sympathy as currency. He says, He wants understanding. He wants leverage. But pity never makes you larger. Pity makes you small enough to carry. Once someone carries you, they set the pace. Silence does the opposite. Silence makes people work. They push. They test. They project. Mystery grows. Fear grows. Respect grows. You didn't lift a finger. Emotional withdrawal turns into gravity. You didn't become colder. You became harder to move. People only want what they can't control. They chase what resists them. They chase quiet, not noise. They chase the person who doesn't explain, who doesn't erupt, who doesn't plead for fairness. The loud man is available. The quiet man is scarce. Scarcity is power. You think expression clears the air. It clouds it. It gives your enemy weather to sail. Outrage is wind in their sails. Hurt is a map of your coastline. Every display marks harbors where ships can dock and pillage. You drew the chart yourself. I have watched allies turn opportunists the second a man reveals his trigger. A partner notes which words bend him. A boss learns which comments push him to mistakes. A friend discovers how guilt makes him fold. Manipulation arrives disguised as concern. I just care. They don't. They care that it works. The cost of vulnerability isn't paid at once. It accrues. One public scene becomes a reputation. One trembling explanation becomes an expectation. Soon, you're managed by everyone who knows the buttons. They don't need to be cruel. They only need to be consistent. You will hear that authenticity demands expression. That's bait. Authenticity without control is self-sabotage. You can feel everything and show nothing. You can bleed privately and sit in public stone. That separation is discipline. It is also safety. Guilt is the oldest weapon. When rage fails, they will reach for it. If you cared, you would react different. Translation: give me access to your center. Don't. Indifference hurts louder than speeches. Regret arrives after your silence, not before it. They remember the door you didn't open. Here is the pattern. Weak men perform emotion to direct the room. The room learns it can direct them back. He shouts. He is handled. He cries. He is shaped. He pleads. He is priced. Control flows to those who need nothing from the audience. So you train it out of yourself. You slow your breathing. You let heat pass without a witness. You keep your hands still. You answer later, or not at all. You speak in short lines that admit nothing and promise less. You let their questions multiply in the vacuum. They will call it cold. Let them. They will test harder. Let them. They will wonder. What moves you? Keep it that way. Concealment is not cruelty. It is self-government. If you cannot govern your face, your tone, your tempo, you do not rule yourself. Someone else does. Remember this tactic and keep it simple. Don't perform. Don't feed the room. Don't audition for mercy. Let your silence carry the weight you used to dump into speeches. Let them search for handles and find none. When they fail to read you, they retreat into stories. Stories become doubts. Doubts become caution. Caution slows attacks. Slowed attacks make mistakes. You win by subtraction, by absence, by withheld heat. Second behavior is public display of emotion. It exposes weakness because it exposes control points. The moment you leak, you lose leverage. The moment you hold, the room bends around you. I won't tell you to be calm. I will tell you to be unreadable. There's a difference. Calm is polite. Unreadable is untouchable. And untouchable wins. End it there. Let them guess. Let them reach. Give them nothing they can use. Third behavior is the compulsion to seek Validation. According to Machiavelli, it is better to be feared than loved. If you cannot be both, they won't admit it, but you can always see it in their eyes. The restless flicker, the quiet desperation, the constant hunger for someone else to confirm their worth. This is the third behavior that instantly exposes weakness, the compulsion to seek validation. A weak man cannot stand in silence. He cannot exist without mirrors. He doesn't feel strong until someone else tells him he is strong. His reflection is not his own. It is borrowed from the eyes of others, and that is where he destroys himself. Inside, he carries a question that never dies. Do you see me? Do you approve of me? It's written in his tone. It's hidden in his posture. It leaks out of every gesture. The strong build quietly. They do not need applause. They already know who they are. But the weak, they can't stand not knowing. Validation becomes their oxygen. Without it, they suffocate. You'll see it everywhere. In the man who posts a picture only to refresh the screen, waiting for reactions. In the colleague who glances around the room to check if his words landed. In the friend who cannot rest until someone tells him he did well. It looks harmless, but it's fatal. Because once a man reveals that he needs validation, he is already trapped. He has handed over the strings. He is predictable. You can control him by feeding what he craves or starving him of it. That is why Machiavelli warned rulers not to rely on love. Love shifts with the wind. Love is unstable. Fear, however, can be commanded. But the weak man ignores this. He is addicted to reassurance, addicted to attention, addicted to the feeling of being seen. He tells himself it's natural, that everyone wants recognition. But what he doesn't see is that this hunger betrays him more than any enemy could. Watch closely. You'll notice the signs, the constant checking, the restless scrolling, the subtle glances to see if anyone is watching. Even in a crowded room, he isn't speaking. He's fishing. Fishing for confirmation. Fishing for proof that he matters. And when he doesn't get it, his mask slips. You'll see the flicker of insecurity, the shift in his posture, the sudden overcompensation. This is why men like this can never hold power for long. Their authority is conditional, their confidence fragile, their strength is not internal. It is borrowed, and borrowed strength can always be taken back. You don't have to confront him to see it. He outs himself. Every compliment he craves, every reassurance he demands, every desperate need to be seen exposes what he is. The strong walk alone. They don't wait for approval. They don't beg for recognition. Their silence is their proof. Their detachment is their power. But the weak need the crowd. They need the echo. They need the applause. And that need is ownership, because whoever can give them approval owns them. Whoever can withhold it controls them. It is not just weakness, it is slavery. That's the truth most men never face. By craving validation, they trade away freedom. You may think it's just insecurity, but insecurity is leverage. It's a leash. And once you see it, you know exactly how to pull it. It's how manipulators operate. They don't need chains. They don't need force. They only need to recognize hunger. And when a man hungers for validation, he becomes the easiest to bend. Every like, every compliment, every nod, each one is a hook in his skin, and he doesn't see it until he is dragged. This is why silence destroys him. Ignore him, and he unravels. He becomes restless, paranoid, desperate. His need for attention drives him to reveal even more weakness. The strong man, on the other hand, grows sharper in silence. He thrives without applause. His strength compounds when unseen, but the weak collapse without recognition. And by collapsing, they prove what they always tried to hide. You can test it yourself. Deny a weak man validation, and he will reveal everything. His fear, his insecurity, his desperation. Watch how quickly he bends. Watch how fast he retreats. That is the compulsion that exposes him. He cannot help himself, and in that inability to stand alone, his weakness is no longer a secret. It's branded across him, visible to all. Remember this: strength is never loud. It does not beg. It does not crave. It does not ask. Weakness does. And once you see that hunger in someone's eyes, the compulsion to be seen, to be approved of, to be validated, you already know what they are. A man owned by his need. And ownership, once revealed, is impossible to hide. According to Machiavelli, the weak betray themselves not through silence, but through the compulsions they cannot escape. They always show you who they are. Not once, not twice, but again and again, until even the blind can see it. Weakness is never hidden for long. It leaks out, it spills, it repeats itself like a broken record, until you can hear nothing else. The strong may falter, but they recover. They may stumble, but they do not circle the same hole forever. The weak do. They live inside loops. You don't need to provoke them. You don't need to force them. You only need to wait. Their patterns will expose them without your effort. Look closer. The need to justify, the restless explanations, the hunger to be understood. Strong men do not waste their breath proving themselves, but weak men, they cannot resist. Every conversation becomes a courtroom. Every silence feels like a threat. They defend themselves, even when no one is attacking. And in that defense, they reveal fear. Watch how they lose control when challenged. Strength absorbs pressure. It grows quieter, sharper. Weakness, on the other hand, unravels. It shows in sudden outbursts, in trembling voices, in the desperate attempt to repair what dignity was never solid to begin with. They believe emotion will prove their case, but all it proves is their lack of command. Validation is their drug, the nod of approval, the shallow compliment, the fleeting reassurance. They beg for it in ways they think no one notices. They fish for it with self-deprecation. They demand it with disguised confidence. They cannot breathe without it. A strong man's silence is enough. A weak man's silence is torture, and so he fills it with noise, exposing his hunger. Machiavelli understood this. He never chased the truth from people. He didn't need to. He knew the weak would always confess, not with words, but with habits. He studied the repetition. He waited for the cycle, and when it appeared, he knew the truth was certain. Repetition is the signature of weakness. The endless justifying, the repeated apologies, the cycle of promises broken, then repeated again with the same hollow conviction. The weak swear they've changed, but their actions betray them. Always. They beg for forgiveness, then commit the same betrayal. They insist on loyalty, yet expose themselves through desperation. The mask cracks. Not because you pulled it off, but because they cannot keep it on. The strong know restraint. They understand the value of conserving energy. They do not argue with every accusation, because they do not need to. They do not defend every choice, because their choices speak for themselves. But weak men, they spend their strength proving, defending, exposing. They cannot hold silence. They cannot bear indifference. And here lies the brutal truth. Weakness always reveals itself first. You don't need skill to see it. You only need patience. The weak reveal themselves before they realize they've been seen. Their behavior is an involuntary confession, and once you've seen it, you can never unsee it. You now hold the advantage, because once you recognize the cycle, you know exactly who you're dealing with. The strong will test you in silence. The weak will show you everything before the game has even begun. Their repetition is a map of their psychology. Every loop tells you where they break. Every cycle tells you what they fear. And this is where power begins. Not in aggression, not in attack, but in recognition. The elite do not guess who is weak. They know. They see the pattern and decide. Sometimes weakness is ignored. Sometimes it is used. And sometimes it is destroyed. But it is always identified. Understand this. Weakness cannot hide from you once you learn to see its repetition. The words may change, but the behavior will not. And when you see it, the mask shatters. You know exactly what they are. And that knowledge alone is power. So remember, the weak expose themselves not in grand betrayals, but in quiet compulsions. They show you by doing the same thing again and again, as if daring you to notice. And when you finally do, the illusion ends, because weakness doesn't whisper. It repeats, and repetition is the final confession.